Hey guys, tonight we're slipping quietly into the sandals of an ordinary Roman citizeno emperors. No gladiators, just you, waking up in the heart of the ancient city. The air is cool, a little damp, and you can already hear the distant clatter of wagon wheels on stone, the cawing of crows perched on red-tiled roofs, and the faint, not so pleasant aroma of last night's fish sauce wafting up from the alley below. You blink awake on your straw-stuffed mattress, and for a moment, you wonder if you're still dreaming until you remember that, statistically, you probably won't survive this century, let alone the day, thanks to Rome's charming mix of lead pipes, open sewers, and the occasional fire. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, post your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where you're all listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stretch, feeling the rough linen of your tunic against your skin, and listen to the city waking up around you. The sun isn't up yet, but Rome never really sleeps. Somewhere, a neighbor is already arguing with his wife about the price of garum, the fermented fish sauce that seems to haunt every Roman kitchen. You hear the slap of sandals on the stairs as someone heads out early, maybe to fetch water, maybe to avoid the landlord. The walls are thin, and privacy is a luxury reserved for the rich. You, on the other hand, are living in an insula, a multi-story apartment block that's more fire hazard than home. If you're lucky, you're on the second or third floor, close enough to the ground to escape in case of fire, but not so close that you're wading through the daily flood of chamber pot contents tossed out the window. Historians still argue whether the top floors were really that much cheaper, or if it was just a clever way for landlords to avoid complaints. You roll over, careful not to disturb the sleeping form next to you, maybe a spouse, maybe a sibling, maybe just a roommate who snores like a drunken centurion. The room is small, barely big enough for the two of you, and the only furniture is a battered chest, a clay oil lamp, and a few baskets of laundry that never seem to get any cleaner. You can hear the muffled sounds of other families waking up, children whining, someone coughing, the creak of a door as an early riser heads out to the communal latrine. If you're feeling brave, you might risk the trip yourself, but most mornings you just hope the neighbors remembered to empty the pot. The city outside is already alive. Vendors are setting up their stalls, shouting the day's prices for bread, olives, and the ever-popular dormice. Yes, those are a thing don't ask until you've had your breakfast. The baker's boy is making his rounds, delivering flat loaves to the wealthier homes, while the rest of you will have to queue at the public oven, hoping there's still something left by the time you get there. The streets are a patchwork of stone and mud, and you can hear the squelch of sandals as people hurry to work, to school, or to the nearest bathhouse for a quick wash. The city smells like a mix of fresh bread, sweat, and the not-so-distant Tiber River, which is both a source of life and a convenient dumping ground for anything you don't want to deal with. You sit up, rubbing your eyes, and glance around your room. The walls are plastered, but the paint is peeling, and there's a suspicious damp patch in the corner that's been growing since the last rainstorm. You make a mental note to mention it to the landlord, but you know he'll just shrug and say, "It's Rome." If you're lucky, you have a small window, but it's more for ventilation than for any kind of view. Most of what you see is the wall of the building next door, maybe a sliver of sky if you crane your neck. Still, it's better than nothing. You shuffle to the door, careful not to trip over the cat that's taken up residence in the hallway. She's not yours, but she's been here longer than you have, and she keeps the mice in check mostly. You step out into the corridor, blinking in the dim light, and make your way down the stairs, dodging a neighbor's laundry and the occasional puddle of something you'd rather not identify. The building creaks and groans, and you wonder, not for the first time, how long it will be before the whole thing collapses. Quirky fact: Roman fire brigades were often run by private citizens, and if your building caught fire, you might have to negotiate a price before they'd put it out. Talk about customer service. Outside, the city is waking up in earnest. The Forum is already buzzing with activity, and you can hear the distant shouts of politicians, merchants, and the occasional street performer trying to make a few coins before the crowds arrive. You pass a group of children playing knucklebones in the street, their laughter echoing off the stone walls. A stray dog noses through a pile of garbage, and you make a mental note to keep your sandals firmly on your feet. The city is alive, chaotic, and more than a little overwhelming, but it's home. You make your way to the public fountain, joining the line of neighbors waiting to fill their jars. The water is cold and clear, piped in from miles away by the famous Roman aqueducts, a marvel of engineering, and one of the few things in the city that actually works most of the time. You chat with the woman in front of you, exchanging gossip about the baker's new apprentice and the senator's latest scandal. Historians still argue whether the average Roman really cared about politics, or if most people were just trying to get through the day without running out of bread. You fill your jar, hefting it onto your shoulder, and head back home, dodging a cart loaded with amphorae and a pair of goats that seem to have escaped from somewhere. The city is a maze of narrow streets, and you have to squeeze past a group of slaves carrying baskets of laundry to the river. You catch a whiff of fresh bread from the bakery, and your stomach rumbles. Breakfast is calling, but first, you have to survive the morning rush. Back in your apartment, you set the jar down and take a moment to catch your breath. The room is already warming up, and you can hear the sounds of the city drifting in through the window. You glance at the small altar in the corner, where a pair of clay figurines your household gods, the Lariskeep, watch over your home. You mutter a quick prayer, just in case, and light a stick of incense. It's a small ritual, but it helps you feel grounded in the chaos of the city. You sit down at the table, such as it is, and take stock of your breakfast options. There's a crust of bread, a handful of olives, and a cup of watered-down wine. If you're feeling fancy, you might have a bit of cheese or some dried fruit, but most mornings it's just the basics. You tear off a piece of bread, dip it in the wine, and try not to think about the fact that the bread was probably baked yesterday or the day before. Still, it's better than nothing. As you eat, you listen to the city outside. The sounds are familiar: the clatter of carts, the shouts of vendors, the distant roar of the crowd at the circus. You wonder what the day will bring: work, errands, maybe a visit to the baths if you're lucky. You finish your breakfast, wipe your hands on your tunic, and get ready to face the day. You pull on your sandals, check your belt pouch for a few coins, and grab your cloak. The city is waiting, and you have things to do. You step out into the street, squinting in the early morning light, and join the flow of people heading to work, to school, to the market. The city is alive, and you're a part of it, just another face in the crowd, trying to make it through another day in Rome. You pass a group of men arguing about the latest chariot race, their voices rising and falling in a familiar rhythm. You catch a snippet of conversation about the price of grain, the state of the aqueducts, and the latest rumors from the palace. You smile to yourself, knowing that some things never change. You make your way to the market, weaving through the crowds and dodging the occasional runaway cart. The city is a patchwork of sights, sounds, and smells, and you take it all in as you go. You pass a temple, its steps crowded with worshippers, and a public bathhouse, steam rising from the open doors. You nod to a neighbor, exchange a few words with a vendor, and keep moving. The day is just beginning, and there's a sense of possibility in the air. You don't know what the day will bring, but you're ready for it, whatever it is. You take a deep breath, savoring the moment, and step into the flow of the city. And so, your day as a Roman citizen begins not with a bang, but with the quiet, determined rhythm of daily life. You're not an emperor, not a gladiator, just an ordinary person trying to make your way in the greatest city in the world. And honestly, that's more than enough adventure for one morning. Now, let's see what's for breakfast. You're still shaking off the last wisps of sleep as you eye your breakfast options, which, let's be honest, are not exactly the stuff of modern brunch menus. The Roman day starts early, and so does your stomach's grumbling. You look at the table if you can call a wobbly plank on 2 bricks a table and see the usual suspects. A chunk of yesterday's bread, a few wrinkled olives, and a cup of watered-down wine that's more about hydration than celebration. If you're feeling particularly flush, there might be a smear of honey or a sliver of cheese, but don't get your hopes up. The Roman breakfast, or intaculum, is famously humble, and you're not about to break that tradition. You tear off a piece of bread, which is so dense you briefly consider using it as a doorstop. The crust is hard enough to chip a tooth, but you dip it in the wine, softening it just enough to chew. The olives are salty, briny, and a little shriveled, but they do the job. You pop one in your mouth and try not to think about the fact that it's probably been sitting in that jar since last Saturnalia. Historians still argue whether the average Roman actually enjoyed these breakfasts, or if they just pretended to for the sake of tradition. As you eat, you watch the city come alive through your tiny window. The baker's boy is already making his rounds, balancing a basket of flat loaves on his head with the kind of skill that would make a modern pizza delivery guy weep. You hear the distant clang of a blacksmith's hammer, the shouts of vendors hawking their wares, and the unmistakable sound of someone dropping a chamber pot out the window. You make a mental note to walk in the middle of the street today. Breakfast in Rome is not about indulgence, it's about fuel. You need energy for the day ahead, whether you're heading to the market, the workshop, or the public baths. The wealthy might enjoy a more elaborate spread, maybe some eggs, fruit, or even a bit of leftover roast meat, but for most citizens, it's bread, olives, and wine, day in and day out. You try not to envy the patricians too much. You remember the time your neighbor tried to spice things up by adding a dollop of garum to his bread. Garum, the infamous fermented fish sauce, is the ketchup of the Roman world, ubiquitous, pungent, and, according to some, an acquired taste. You gave it a try once and spent the rest of the morning regretting your life choices. Still, it's a staple, and you can't escape its salty embrace. Quirky fact: some Romans even used garum as a medicine, believing it could cure everything from indigestion to dog bites. You're not convinced. You finish your meager meal and wipe your hands on your tunic, which is already sporting a collection of mysterious stains. You glance at the small oil lamp flickering in the corner, its flame dancing in the morning breeze. The lamp oil is expensive, so you're careful not to let it burn too long. You blow it out, plunging the room into a soft, golden gloom. You hear a commotion in the hallway and poke your head out to see what's going on. Your neighbor Marcus is arguing with his wife about the price of eggs. She insists they're too expensive. He insists they're a necessity. And you quietly back away before you get dragged into the debate. You make a mental note to avoid the egg stall at the market today. You head back inside and gather your things for the day. Your breakfast may have been simple, but it's enough to get you moving. You tie your sandals, adjust your belt, and grab your coin pouch, which feels distressingly light. You check your reflection in a polished bronze mirror. Your hair is a mess, your tunic is wrinkled, and you have a smear of olive oil on your chin. Perfect. You step outside, blinking in the bright morning light. The street is already bustling, and you join the flow of people heading to work, to school, or to the market. You pass a vendor selling hot pulse, a kind of porridge made from spelt or barley. It's cheap, filling, and about as exciting as eating wallpaper paste, but it's a staple for many Romans. You consider buying a bowl, but decide to save your coins for lunch. You make your way to the public fountain, where a group of women are already gossiping as they fill their water jars. You catch snippets of conversation about the latest scandal at the baths, the price of fish, and the mysterious disappearance of someone's pet chicken. You fill your own jar, careful not to spill any, and nod politely to the others. The water is cold and refreshing, and you take a long drink before heading on your way. As you walk, you pass a bakery, its windows fogged with steam. The smell of fresh bread is intoxicating, and you can't resist peeking inside. The baker is pulling loaves from the oven, their crusts golden and crackling. You buy a small roll, still warm from the fire, and savor the first bite. It's a rare treat, and you make it last as long as possible. You continue down the street, dodging a group of children playing with a wooden hoop. One of them nearly knocks you over, but you sidestep just in time. You smile, remembering your own childhood games, knucklebones, marbles, and the occasional ill-advised attempt at chariot racing with a laundry basket. Those were the days. You pass a fruit vendor, his stall piled high with figs, dates, and apples. The fruit is expensive, but you can't resist buying a single fig. You bite into it, the sweet juice running down your chin, and for a moment you feel like a patrician. You savor the taste, knowing it might be a while before you can afford another. You make your way to the market square, where the real action is just beginning. Vendors are shouting, customers are haggling, and the air is thick with the smell of spices, sweat, and the occasional whiff of something unidentifiable. You weave through the crowd, keeping a tight grip on your coin pouch. Pickpockets are everywhere, and you're not about to make their job any easier. You stop at a stall selling honey cakes, their golden crusts glistening in the sun. You buy one, breaking it in half and sharing it with a friend you spot in the crowd. The cake is sweet, sticky, and just a little bit burnt exactly how you like it. You chat with your friend, swapping stories and gossip, and for a moment, you forget about the worries of the day. You glance at the sun, realizing it's almost time to head to work. You say goodbye to your friend, pocket the last crumbs of your honey cake, and make your way through the bustling streets. The city is alive, and you're right in the middle of it. As you walk, you pass a group of men gathered around a street performer. He's juggling knives, telling jokes, and generally making a nuisance of himself. You stop to watch, laughing along with the crowd. The performer winks at you, and you toss him a coin. He catches it mid-juggle and bows deeply. you can't help but smile. You continue on your way, feeling a little lighter. Breakfast may have been simple, but the city is full of small, pleasures-warm bread, sweet figs, a good joke. You take a deep breath, savoring the moment, and step into the flow of the day. You pass a temple, its steps crowded with worshippers. You pause for a moment, offering a silent prayer to the gods. You're not particularly religious, but it never hurts to hedge your bets. You toss a small coin into the offering box and continue on your way. You make your way to your workplace, whether it's a shop, a workshop, or a stall in the market. The day is just beginning, and there's work to be done. You roll up your sleeves, take a deep breath, and get to it. As you work, you think about the day ahead: lunch, errands, maybe a visit to the baths if you're lucky. You smile to yourself, knowing that, despite the hardships, there's a certain rhythm to Roman life that's oddly comforting. You're part of a city that never sleeps, never stops, and never quite loses its sense of humor. And so, your day continues on: bite of bread, one sip of wine, one small pleasure at a time. You may not have much, but you have enough. And in Rome, that's all you really need. You're standing in front of your battered chest, eyeing the contents with the resigned air of someone who knows that, in Rome, fashion is less about self-expression and more about not getting fined for public indecency. Getting dressed as a Roman citizen is a daily exercise in patience, practicality, and, occasionally, public humiliation. You reach for your tunic, the basic garment of every Roman, and give it a good shake, partly to smooth out the wrinkles, partly to dislodge any enterprising insects that might have taken up residence overnight. The tunic is made of coarse wool, and as you pull it over your head, it scratches your skin in all the wrong places. You try not to think about how many times it's been patched, or how the color has faded from respectable off-white to mysterious beige. Historians still argue whether the average Roman actually cared about the color of their tunic, or if they just pretended to for the sake of social climbing. You suspect it's a bit of both. If you're a man, your next decision is whether to brave the toga. The toga is the ultimate status symbol worn by citizens, shunned by slaves, and universally despised by anyone who's ever tried to put one on without help. You eye the massive semicircle of wool, roughly the size of a picnic blanket, and sigh. Wrapping a toga is a skill that takes years to master, and even then, you're never quite sure if you've got it right. You drape, fold, and tuck, trying to achieve that effortless, "I'm a respectable Roman" look, but end up with something closer to, "I lost a fight with a laundry basket." If you're a woman, you might be wrangling with a stola, a long sleeveless dress, or a palla, a shawl that's equal parts fashion statement and portable blanket. You glance at your reflection in a polished bronze mirror, tilting your head to see if the toga is crooked. It is. You try to fix it, but the more you fuss, the worse it gets. You briefly consider just wearing your tunic and hoping no one notices, but you remember the last time someone tried that stern lecture from the local edile and a fine that took weeks to pay off. Quirky fact: there's actually a law against wearing a toga if you're in mourning, unless you dye it a somber shade of gray. Fashion police? Roman style. You finally get your toga, or stola, more or less in place, and reach for your belt, a simple strip of leather that does its best to keep everything together. You tie it around your waist, cinching the tunic so it doesn't flap in the breeze. You slip your feet into your sandals, which are sturdy, practical, and about as comfortable as walking on a bundle of sticks. You wiggle your toes, hoping today won't involve too much running. You rummage through your chest for accessories. If you're feeling fancy, you might pin a brooch to your shoulder or slip on a ring or two. Jewelry is a subtle way to show off your status, just enough to impress the neighbors, not enough to attract the attention of thieves. You remember the story of old Gaius, who wore a gold ring to the market and came home with a very creative new haircut. Lesson learned. You check your hair, which is always a challenge. Roman hairstyles are a moving targetone. Year it's short and simple. The next it's elaborate curls and braids that require half a jar of olive oil and the patience of a saint. You do your best with what you've got, smoothing down the worst of the cowlicks and hoping for the best. If you're a woman, you might twist your hair into a bun or braid, securing it with pins and maybe a ribbon if you're feeling festive. If you're a man, you keep it short and neat, unless you're a philosopher, in which case, all bets are off. You glance at your neighbor, who's struggling with his own toga. He's managed to wrap it around his head like a turban, and you stifle a laugh. You offer to help, and together you wrestle the wool into something resembling proper attire. It's a bonding experience, and you both end up looking slightly less ridiculous than before. You step outside, feeling the weight of your clothes and the eyes of the city on you. Fashion in Rome is as much about fitting in as it is about standing out. The right clothes can open doors, while the wrong ones can get you turned away from the best parties or worse, mistaken for a slave. You remember the time you wore a tunic that was just a little too short and spent the whole day dodging jokes about your fashion-forward knees. You make your way down the street, passing a group of women chatting on a doorstep. They're comparing the latest styles, debating the merits of imported silk versus good old Roman wool. You overhear one of them mention a new dye from the East that turns fabric a shocking shade of purple. Only the emperor is allowed to wear it. But that doesn't stop the rumorser, the occasional fashion disaster. Historians still argue whether the ban on purple was strictly enforced, or if it was just another way for the elite to show off. You pass a tailor's shop where a row of mannequins display the latest trends. The tailor is busy measuring a customer for a new tunic, his tape fluttering in the breeze. You pause to admire the craftsmanship, noting the intricate embroidery and the careful stitching. You make a mental note to save up for a new tunic maybe next year. You continue on your way, dodging a group of children playing tag in the street. One of them grabs the hem of your toga, nearly pulling it off. You laugh, but make a quick adjustment, just in case. You remember the story of the senator who tripped over his toga during a speech and ended up in the fountain. Fashion is dangerous business. You stop at a market stall selling ribbons and pins. The vendor shows you a new style of brooch, shaped like a dolphin. It's charming, if a little impractical, and you consider buying it as a gift. You haggle over the price, finally settling on a few coins. You tuck the brooch into your pouch, feeling a little more stylish already. You pass a group of men gathered around a barber's stall. The barber is busy shaving a customer, his razor flashing in the sunlight. You consider stopping for a trim, but decide to wait until after work. The line is long, and you're not in the mood for small talk. Quirky fact: some Romans believed that shaving with a dull razor could bring bad luck, so barbers were always in high demand. You make your way to the forum, your clothes neatly arranged and your hair as tidy as it's going to get. You feel a sense of pride, knowing that you look the part of a respectable citizen. You nod to a passing magistrate who gives your toga a quick once-over before moving on. You breathe a sigh of relief. No finds today. You join the crowd, blending in with the sea of tunics, togas, and stolas. The city is alive with color and movement, and you're just one thread in the tapestry. You spot a friend across the square, waving you over. You make your way through the crowd, careful not to trip over your own feet. You spend a few minutes catching up, swapping stories about the latest fashion disasters and wardrobe malfunctions. Your friend tells you about a new trend wearing your tunic inside out for good luck. You're skeptical, but you make a mental note to try it next time you need a little extra fortune. You glance at the sun, realizing it's almost time to head to work. You say goodbye to your friend, adjust your toga one last time, and set off down the street. The city is waiting, and you're ready to face whatever the day throws at Yuchi wool, crooked hems, and all. As you walk, you pass a group of children playing dress-up with scraps of fabric. They're pretending to be senators, magistrates, and even the emperor himself. You smile, remembering your own childhood games, and wonder what the next generation of Romans will wear. You make your way home at the end of the day, your clothes a little more rumpled, your sandals a little more worn. You peel off your toga, grateful to be free of its weight, and slip into something more comfortable, a simple tunic, soft with age. You stretch out on your bed, feeling the cool linen against your skin, and close your eyes. You drift off to sleep, dreaming of a world where togas never wrinkle, sandals never pinch, and fashion is just a little bit easier. But for now, you're content to be a Roman citizen, dressed for success, more or less. You're back in your insula, the Roman apartment block that's equal parts home, hazard, and social experiment. The door creaks as you step inside, and you're greeted by the familiar jumble of smells. Last night's stew, damp wool, and a faint whiff of smoke from the neighbor's overzealous attempt at roasting chestnuts. Your living space is small, cozy, if you're feeling optimistic, cramped if you're being honest. The walls are plastered, but the paint is flaking, and there's a suspicious crack running from the ceiling to the floor that you swear gets longer every time it rains. Historians still argue whether most insulae were truly as rickety as the ancient satirists claimed, or if that was just the world's first case of "my landlord is the worst" humor. You set your things down on the battered chest that doubles as a table, seat, and, on especially crowded nights, a bed for visiting relatives. The room is dim, lit by a single oil lamp perched on a shelf. You glance at the window, really more of a hole in the wall with a wooden shutter end, see the neighbor's laundry flapping in the breeze, threatening to invade your personal space. You close the shutter, but not before a stray sock makes a daring escape into your room. You take a moment to appreciate the layout of your home. If you're lucky, you have 2 rooms, one for sleeping, one for everything else. If you're really lucky, you have a tiny courtyard, a patch of sunlight where you can grow a few herbs or just sit and pretend you're in a villa on the Palatine Hill. Most days, though, you're sharing your space with family, roommates, and the occasional mouse who refuses to pay rent. Quirky fact: some Romans kept weasels as pets, believing they brought good luck and kept the vermin in check. You're not sure if your landlord would approve, but you're tempted to try it anyway. You hear a commotion from the stairwell, a neighbor's child, chasing a chicken, a dog barking, someone shouting about a missing sandal. The insula is alive with noise, and privacy is a rare commodity. You can hear every argument, every laugh, every off-key attempt at singing from the apartment next door. You try to tune it out, focusing instead on the small comforts of home, the familiar creak of the floorboards, the warmth of the sun streaming through the window, the smell of fresh bread from the bakery downstairs. You step into the courtyard, if you have one, and take a deep breath. The air is fresher here, tinged with the scent of rosemary and thyme from your little garden. You water the plants, shoo away a curious pigeon, and enjoy a moment of peace before the chaos resumes. You hear the distant sound of a flute, someone practicing for the next festival, and you smile. You head back inside, where your family is already gathering for the midday meal. The table is set with simple dishes: bread, cheese, olives, maybe a bit of leftover stew. You squeeze in between your siblings, passing plates and sharing stories from the morning. The conversation is lively, punctuated by laughter and the occasional squabble over the last piece of cheese. You remember the time your cousin tried to sneak an extra helping and ended up with a face full of lentil soup. Family meals are never dull. After lunch, you help tidy up, sweeping the floor and washing the dishes in a basin of cold water. The chores are simple but necessary, and everyone pitches in. You hang the laundry out to dry, hoping the weather holds. You glance up at the roof, which is patched with tiles and bits of wood, and make a mental note to check for leaks before the next rainstorm. Quirky fact: some wealthier Romans installed lead pipes to carry water to their homes, not realizing that their fancy plumbing was slowly poisoning them. You're almost grateful for your humble clay jars and buckets. You take a break, sitting by the window and watching the world go by. The street below is a constant parade of vendors, children, and the occasional goat. You wave to a friend passing by, exchanging a few words about the weather and the latest gossip. You hear the distant roar of the crowd from the circus, a reminder that life in Rome is never quiet for long. As the afternoon wears on, you tackle a few more chores: mending a torn tunic, sweeping the courtyard, checking the pantry for supplies. You find a jar of honey, a rare treat, and hide it in the back of the cupboard for a special occasion. You remember the time your little brother found your secret stash and ate the whole thing in one sitting. You're still not sure how he managed to get the lid off. You hear a knock at the door and open it to find your neighbor Lucia holding a basket of figs. She offers you a few, and you invite her in for a chat. You sit together, sharing fruit and stories, and for a moment, the worries of the day fade away. You talk about everything, and nothing: family, work, the latest rumors from the forum. Historians still argue whether Roman women had more freedom than their Greek counterparts, or if that's just wishful thinking. You suspect the truth is somewhere in between. As evening approaches, you light the oil lamp and gather with your family in the main room. The city outside is still bustling, but inside, there's a sense of calm. You play a game of knucklebones with your siblings, laughing as the pieces clatter across the floor. You tell stories, sing songs, and enjoy the simple pleasures of home. You glance around the room, taking in the familiar sights: the worn rug on the floor, the faded tapestry on the wall, the little altar in the corner where you offer prayers to the household gods. You feel a sense of belonging, knowing that, despite the chaos and the noise, this is your place in the world. You head to bed, curling up on your straw mattress and pulling a thin blanket over your shoulders. The room is quiet now. The only sound, the soft breathing of your family as they drift off to sleep. You close your eyes, listening to the distant hum of the city, and let yourself relax. You dream of sunny courtyards, laughter, and the warmth of home. You may not have much, but you have enough. And in Rome, that's all you really need. You wake to the sound of your little brother's feet thumping across the floor, a sure sign that the day's family chaos is about to begin. In Rome, family life is a full contact sport, and you're right in the middle of it whether you like it or not. The Roman domus, or even your cramped insula apartment, is never truly quiet. There's always someone shouting, laughing, or arguing about who forgot to feed the household gods. You stretch, yawn, and brace yourself for another round of "Who moved my sandals?" Your mother is already up, bustling around the kitchen area, her hair pinned back with a bone comb and her sleeves rolled up. She's the general of this little army, and you know better than to get in her way before she's had her morning honey water. Your father, if he's home, is probably reading a wax tablet or muttering about the price of grain. He's the paterfamilias, the legal head of the household, and his word is technically law, though you've noticed that your mother's word seems to carry just as much weight, especially when it comes to chores. Historians still argue whether Roman fathers were truly all-powerful, or if Roman mothers just let them think they were. You help your siblings get ready, untangling knots in your sister's hair and refereeing a heated debate over who gets the last fig. Family roles are clear, but not always fair. If you're the eldest, you're expected to set an exemplano pressure. If you're the youngest, you're everyone's favorite and everyone's scapegoat, sometimes in the same hour. You remember the time you tried to sneak out of chores by hiding in the laundry basket, only to be discovered by your grandmother, who has the eyesight of an eagle and the patience of a saint. Speaking of grandparents, they're a fixture in the Roman household. Your grandmother is the keeper of family stories, recipes, and the occasional embarrassing secret. She sits by the window, shelling beans and offering unsolicited advice to anyone within earshot. Your grandfather, if he's still around, is probably napping in the sun, a half-finished cup of wine at his side. Quirky fact: some Roman families kept wax masks of their ancestors, displaying them during important ceremonies to remind everyone of their illustrious lineage and, presumably, to guilt the children into behaving. You gather around the table for the morning meal, passing bread, cheese, and olives back and forth. Conversation is lively, with everyone talking at once. Your mother asks about your plans for the day. Your father grumbles about taxes, and your little brother tries to sneak a second helping of honey. You roll your eyes, but you wouldn't trade this chaos for anything. After breakfast, it's time for chores. You help sweep the floor, fetch water from the fountain, and feed the chickens in the courtyard. Your sister is in charge of the laundry, scrubbing tunics on a stone slab and hanging them out to dry. You take turns with the household tasks, grumbling good-naturedly but getting the job done. You remember the time your brother tried to skip out on his chores by claiming he'd been cursed by the household gods. Your mother was not amused. You glance at the family altar, a small shelf in the corner adorned with clay figurines, fresh flowers, and the occasional offering of fruit or wine. Every morning, someone lights a stick of incense and mutters a quick prayer for health, luck, and a quiet day. You take your turn, bowing your head and whispering your hopes to the Laras and Penates. It's a small ritual, but it brings a sense of order to the daily chaos. You head out into the street, your siblings in tow, ready to face the day. If you're a boy, you might be heading to school, where a stern teacher waits with a bundle of wax tablets and a stick for discipline. If you're a girl, you're more likely to stay home, learning the skills you'll need to run a household of your own someday. You envy the boys their freedom, but not their homework. Historians still debate how much education Roman girls actually received. Some say it was limited to the basics. Others argue that wealthy families gave their daughters a surprisingly thorough education. You pass neighbors in the hallway, exchanging greetings and gossip. The insula is a community unto itself. with everyone looking out for each other mostly. You remember the time your neighbor borrowed a cup of flour and returned it 6 months later, along with a suspiciously lumpy cake. You still haven't figured out what was in it. You make your way to the market, your siblings trailing behind like ducklings. The stalls are crowded, the air thick with the smell of spices, fresh bread, and the occasional whiff of something less pleasant. You help your mother haggle with the vendors, learning the fine art of negotiation. You watch as she inspects the produce, squeezing figs and sniffing melons with the practiced eye of someone who's seen it all. You try to imitate her, but end up dropping a basket of apples. The vendor laughs, and you blush, but your mother just shakes her head and pays for the bruised fruit. You return home, arms full of groceries, and help unload the day's haul. The kitchen is a whirlwind of activity as everyone pitches in to prepare the midday meal. You chop vegetables, stir the pot, and sneak tastes when you think no one is looking. Your grandmother catches you every time, but she just winks and hands you a slice of cheese. Lunch is a noisy affair, with everyone talking over each other and passing dishes back and forth. You savor the simple food, grateful for the company and the laughter. After the meal, you help clean up, washing dishes and sweeping the floor. You grumble about the chores, but you know it's all part of family life. The afternoon is quieter, with everyone settling into their own routines. Your father heads out to work, your mother tends to the garden, and your siblings scatter to their various tasks. You take a moment to yourself, sitting by the window and watching the world go by. You think about your family, messy, loud, and sometimes infuriating, but always there when you need them. As evening falls, the family gathers again, sharing stories from the day and planning for tomorrow. You play games, sing songs, and enjoy the simple pleasures of home. You glance around the room, taking in the familiar faces and the warmth of the fire. You feel a sense of belonging, knowing that no matter what the day brings, your family will always be there. You head to bed, tired but content, listening to the soft sounds of your family settling in for the night. You close your eyes, grateful for the chaos, the laughter, and the love that fills your home. You drift off to sleep, dreaming of another day in the life of a Roman family, messy, noisy, and absolutely perfect in its own way. You're out the door before the sun is high, the city already humming with the energy of 1,000 different hustles. Rome is a city of work, some of it glamorous, most of it not, and all of it necessary to keep the empire's heart beating. You take a deep breath, the air thick with the scent of baking bread, roasting chestnuts, and the less inviting aroma of the tanner's workshop down the street. Today, you're just another cog in the great Roman machine, ready to earn your keep and maybe, just maybe, get ahead. You pass the Forum, where the city's movers and shakers are already deep in debate, their voices echoing off marble columns. But you're not here to argue politics or make grand speeches. Your work is more hands-on, more practical, and, let's be honest, a lot less likely to get you stabbed in the back by a rival senator. Historians still argue whether the average Roman citizen aspired to political office, or if most were content to leave the scheming to the professionals. You, for one, are happy to keep your head down and your hands busy. If you're a craftsman, your day starts in the workshop, the air thick with sawdust, sweat, and the steady rhythm of hammers on wood. You might be a potter, shaping clay into bowls and jars, your hands moving with practiced ease. Or maybe you're a cobbler, stitching sandals for the endless parade of Roman feet. The work is hard, the pay modest, but there's a certain pride in seeing your wares on the feet and tables of your neighbors. You remember the time you tried to make a pair of sandals for your little brother and ended up with something that looked more like a catapult? He wore them anyway, just to make you laugh. If you're a merchant, your day is a whirlwind of haggling, shouting, and the constant jingle of coins. You set up your stall in the market, arranging your good spices from the east, wool from the provinces, maybe even a few rare trinkets from far-off lands. You call out to passers-by, extolling the virtues of your wares and offering special prices that are, of course, only available today. Quirky fact: some Roman merchants hired professional criers to shout their slogans, turning the market into a cacophony of competing voices. You wonder if anyone actually listens, or if everyone just tunes it out like background noise. If you're a laborer, your work is even more physical. You might be hauling stones for a new building, mixing mortar, or digging ditches for the city's ever-expanding network of aqueducts. The work is backbreaking, the hours long, and the pay barely enough to keep you in bread and olives. But there's a camaraderie among the workers, a sense of shared struggle that makes the day go by a little faster. You swap jokes, share lunch, and compete to see who can carry the heaviest load. You remember the time your friend tried to impress everyone by lifting a massive stone, only to drop it on his own foot. He limped for a week, but he still tells the story like he's a hero. If you're a woman, your work is just as important, though it rarely gets the same recognition. You might be weaving cloth, spinning wool, or managing the household accounts with a sharp eye and a sharper tongue. You keep the family fed, the children clothed, and the home running smoothly, a full-time job in itself. You remember the time you tried to teach your little brother to weave, only for him to turn the loom into a makeshift slingshot. The cat still hasn't forgiven you. You pass the public baths, where a group of slaves are scrubbing the floors and hauling buckets of water. Their work is endless, their lives hard, and you're reminded of how much of Rome's daily life depends on the labor of those with no voice. You nod to one of the bath attendants, exchanging a brief smile. It's a small gesture, but it means something. You make your way through the city, dodging carts, stray dogs, and the occasional runaway goat. The streets are alive with activity vendors shouting, children playing, and the ever-present hum of a city that never truly sleeps. You stop to chat with a friend, swapping stories about the day's work and the latest gossip from the forum. You laugh, complain, and commiserate, knowing that everyone is just trying to get by. You head to the bakery, where the air is warm and fragrant. The baker is pulling fresh loaves from the oven, their crusts golden and crackling. You buy a loaf, still warm, and tear off a piece, savoring the taste. You remember the time you tried to bake your own bread and ended up with something that could double as a doorstop. Your family still teases you about it. You pass a group of scribes, their fingers stained with ink as they copy documents for the city's officials. Their work is meticulous, their eyes sharp, and their patience legendary. You watch as they dip their pens, the scratch of quill on parchment a steady counterpoint to the chaos outside. You wonder if you could ever sit still that long. You make your way to the docks, where ships from across the empire unload their cargo grain from Egypt, wine from Gaul, olive oil from Spain. The air is thick with the smell of salt and fish, and the shouts of sailors echo across the water. You watch as workers unload amphorae, their muscles straining under the weight. You remember the time you tried to help and nearly dropped a jar on your foot. You leave the heavy lifting to the professionals now. You stop at a stall selling trinkets, glass beads, bronze pins, and tiny clay figurines. You buy a small charm for your sister, a token of luck for her upcoming exam. The vendor winks, promising that it's guaranteed to bring good fortune. You're skeptical, but you buy it anyway. Quirky fact: some Romans believed that certain amulets could ward off the evil eye, and you see people wearing them everywhere on necklaces, bracelets, even sewn into their clothes. You head home as the sun begins to set, your feet sore and your hands dirty. The city is quieter now, the hustle and bustle giving way to the soft glow of oil lamps and the distant sound of music from a nearby tavern. You pass a group of musicians playing in the street, their tunes lively and infectious. You stop to listen, tapping your foot in time with the music. You toss a coin into the hat, grateful for the small joys that make the day a little brighter. You arrive home, tired, but satisfied. You wash up, change into a clean tunic, and join your family for the evening meal. You share stories from the day, laughing at the mishaps and celebrating the small victories. You feel a sense of accomplishment, knowing that you've done your part to keep the city running. As you drift off to sleep, you think about the work that awaits you tomorrow. It's not glamorous, it's not easy, but it's yours. And in Rome, that's something to be proud of. You're up early, coins jingling in your pouch, and a mental shopping list running through your head. Today is market day, and you're ready to brave the chaos of Rome's bustling stalls, where fortunes are made, friendships are tested, and the art of haggling is as essential as breathing. The sun is barely up, but the streets are already alive with the clatter of carts, the shouts of vendors, and the unmistakable aroma of fresh bread mingling with, well, less appetizing city scents. You make your way to the Forum, the heart of Roman commerce, dodging a goat that seems to have mistaken your tunic for breakfast. The market is a riot of color and sound, stalls piled high with olives, figs, and garum, fishmongers waving their catch of the day, and a chorus of voices all promising the best deals in the city. You squeeze through the crowd, clutching your coin pouch a little tighter. Pickpockets are as common as pigeons here, and twice as bold. Quirky fact: some Romans carried their money in little leather purses tied to their belts, but the truly paranoid would sew coins into the hems of their tunics. You briefly consider this, but decide you'd rather not jingle with every step. Your first stop is the olive vendor, a grizzled old man with a beard that could double as a bird's nest. He greets you with a toothy grin and a handful of samples, each olive saltier than the last. You haggle over the price, tossing out a few well-practiced complaints about last week's batch being a little too briny. He counters with a story about his cousin's miraculous olive tree, which, according to him, produces fruit so perfect even the gods are jealous. Historians still argue whether Roman markets were truly this lively, or if ancient writers just had a flair for dramatic exaggeration. You suspect the truth is somewhere in the middle after all. A good story is worth a few extra sesterces. You move on to the bread stall, where the baker's daughter is arranging loaves in neat rows. The smell is heavenly, and you can't resist buying a fresh loaf, still warm from the oven. You break off a piece and pop it in your mouth, savoring the crisp crust and soft crumb. You remember the time you tried to bake your own bread and ended up with something that could double as a discus for the next athletic games. Your family still teases you about it, but you secretly enjoy the joke. Next, you head to the fishmonger, whose stall is a study in organized chaos. Fish of every shape and size are laid out on beds of seaweed, their eyes staring blankly at the sky. You wrinkle your nose at the smell, but you know that fresh fish is a rare treat. You haggle over a plump mullet, finally settling on a price that leaves both you and the vendor feeling like you've won. You wrap your prize in a scrap of cloth and tuck it into your basket, already planning how you'll cook it for dinner. You wander through the market, stopping at stalls selling fruit, cheese, and the ever-present garum. You sample a fig, its sweetness a welcome contrast to the salty olives and pungent fish. You buy a wedge of cheese, its sharp flavor making your mouth water. You pass a vendor selling honey cakes, their golden crusts glistening in the sun. You buy one, breaking it in half and sharing it with a friend you spot in the crowd. The cake is sweet, sticky, and just a little bit burnt exactly how you like it. You pause at a stall selling spices from the far corners of the empire, pepper from India, cinnamon from Arabia, and a mysterious powder the vendor claims will make your stew sing. You're skeptical, but you buy a pinch anyway, curious to see if it lives up to the hype. Quirky fact: black pepper was so valuable in Rome that it was sometimes used as currency, and wealthy Romans would show off their status by serving heavily spiced dishes at dinner parties. You wonder if anyone ever tried to pay their rent in peppercorns. You stop to watch a street performer juggling knives and telling jokes, his hat on the ground, collecting coins from the crowd. You toss in a coin, laughing along with the rest of the audience. The performer winks at you, and you feel a little lighter, the worries of the day fading away for a moment. You make your way to the money changer's stall, where a stern-looking man sits behind a table covered in coins from every corner of the empire. You exchange a few denarii for smaller change, marveling at the variety of coins, some shiny and new, others worn smooth by years of use. You remember the time you accidentally tried to pay with a coin from Gaul and got a lecture on the importance of proper Roman currency. You nod politely, pocket your change, and move on. You pass a group of women gossiping as they shop, their baskets overflowing with produce. You catch snippets of conversation about the latest scandal at the baths, the price of eggs, and the mysterious disappearance of someone's pet chicken. You smile, knowing that some things never change. Gossip is the true currency of the Roman market. You stop at a stall selling pottery, admiring the craftsmanship of the bowls and jars. You buy a small cup, its surface decorated with a playful scene of dolphins leaping through waves. The vendor wraps it carefully, and you tuck it into your basket, already imagining it on your table at home. You make your way to the edge of the market, where a group of children are playing a game of knucklebones. You watch for a moment, remembering your own childhood games, and toss a coin to the winner. The children cheer, and you feel a pang of nostalgia for simpler times. You head home, your basket full and your purse a little lighter. You pass a beggar, sitting by the side of the road, his hand outstretched. You drop a coin into his palm, offering a smile and a kind word. Quirky fact: some Romans believed that giving alms to the poor would bring good luck, and you're not about to take any chances. You arrive home, unloading your purchases and sharing the spoils with your family. The kitchen is a whirlwind of activity, as everyone pitches in to prepare the evening meal. You chop vegetables, stir the pot, and sneak tastes when you think no one is looking. Your grandmother catches you every time, but she just winks and hands you a slice of cheese. As the sun sets, you sit down to dinner, surrounded by the people you love and the fruits of your labor. You savor each bite, grateful for the abundance and the company. You share stories from the market, laughing at the day's mishaps and celebrating the small victories. You feel a sense of contentment knowing that, in Rome, a good meal and good company are the true measures of wealth. You drift off to sleep, your belly full and your heart light, dreaming of another day in the bustling markets of Rome where every coin, every bargain, and every story is part of the grand tapestry of daily life. You're carrying a bundle of towels and a battered wooden comb, weaving your way through the crowded streets toward the nearest public baths. The Roman thermae are more than just a place to get clean. They're the city's social engine, a steamy, echoing world where business deals are struck, gossip is traded, and, if you're lucky, you might even get the grime out from under your fingernails. The air is thick with anticipation, and the faint, ever-present aroma of olive oil and damp stone. You pay your small entrance fee to the attendant, who barely glances up from his game of dice. You step inside, greeted by a wave of warm, humid air and the sound of voices bouncing off marble walls. The baths are a labyrinth of rooms. The apoditerium, where you undress and stash your clothes in a cubby. The frigidarium, with its bracing cold plunge. The tepidarium, a warm, misty chamber perfect for easing into the experience. And the caldarium, a steamy, almost suffocating hot room that leaves you feeling like a boiled turnip. Historians still argue whether the average Roman actually enjoyed the full circuit, or if most people just skipped straight to the hot bath and called it a day. You find a spot in the apoditerium, stripping down and handing your clothes to a slave who, for a few extra coins, promises to keep an eye on them. You eye him skeptically, remembering the time your best tunic walked off while you were soaking. You keep your coin pouch tucked deep in your towel, just in case. Quirky fact: some Romans actually hired professional clothes watchers to guard their belongings, a job that required equal parts vigilance and a strong stomach for the smell of wet wool. You step into the tepidarium, the warm air wrapping around you like a blanket. The room is filled with people lounging on benches, chatting about everything from politics to the latest chariot race. You settle in, eavesdropping on a heated debate about whether the new aqueduct is really necessary or just another excuse for the city engineers to show off. You stifle a laugh, remembering the time the aqueduct burst and turned the street into a makeshift swimming pool. You move on to the caldarium, the hottest room in the baths. The steam is so thick you can barely see your own feet, and the air is heavy with the scent of eucalyptus and sweat. You find a spot on the bench, careful not to sit too close to the wall this time. You nearly scorched your backside. You close your eyes, letting the heat seep into your muscles, and feel the tension of the day melt away. You listen to the low murmur of conversation, the occasional splash of water, and the distant sound of someone singing off-key. You grab a strigil, a curved metal scraper, and begin the ritual of cleaning your skin. You slather yourself with olive oil, working it into your arms and legs, then use the strigil to scrape away the oil, dirt, and sweat. It's oddly satisfying, like peeling the world's most ancient sticker off your body. You remember the time your little brother tried to use a strigil as a toy sword and ended up covered in olive oil from head to toe. The cat still hasn't forgiven him. You make your way to the frigidarium, bracing yourself for the shock of cold water. You plunge in, gasping as the chill hits you, and feel instantly awake. You swim a few lazy laps, enjoying the coolness after the heat of the caldarium. You float on your back, staring up at the painted ceiling, and let your mind wander. You wonder how many other Romans have floated here, dreaming of glory, love, or just a really good dinner. You climb out, shivering, and wrap yourself in your towel. You head back to the apoditerium, where your clothes are, miraculously, still there. You dress quickly, feeling cleaner and lighter than you have in days. You run a comb through your hair, trying to tame the wild curls that always seem to have a mind of their own. You linger in the baths, chatting with friends and acquaintances. The baths are the great equalizer of Roman society, rich and poor, young and old. Everyone comes here to relax, socialize, and catch up on the latest news. You overhear a group of women discussing the best way to remove wine stains from a tunic. Answer, don't spill the wine in the first place, while a pair of old men argue about the merits of different gladiators. You join in, offering your own opinion and getting drawn into the friendly banter. You watch as a group of children splash in the shallow pool, their laughter echoing off the walls. You remember your own childhood visits to the baths, the thrill of sneaking into the caldarium when you were supposed to be in the frigidarium. You smile, knowing that some things never change. You dry off, feeling refreshed and ready to face the rest of the day. You thank the attendant, toss him a coin, and step back out into the sunlight. The city feels different, now brighter, cleaner, and just a little bit more manageable. You take a deep breath, savoring the fresh air, and set off down the street, your skin tingling and your spirits high. You pass a group of men playing dice in the shade, their laughter ringing out over the noise of the street. You stop to watch, tempted to join in, but decide to save your luck for another day. You remember the time you lost your entire week's wages in a single game, and the long walk home that followed. Lesson learned mostly. You make your way home, feeling relaxed and content. You join your family for the evening meal, sharing stories from the baths and laughing at the day's adventures. You feel a sense of connection, knowing that in Rome, the baths are more than just a place to get clean, they're a place to belong. As you drift off to sleep, you dream of warm water, friendly faces, and the simple pleasure of being part of something bigger than yourself. You may not have much, but you have the bath sand in Rome that's worth its weight in gold. You're back in your kitchen, the air thick with the mingled scents of garlic, herbs, and something suspiciously smoky coming from the neighbor's window. It's time to think about food, real food, not just the crust of bread and olives you had for breakfast. Your stomach rumbles, and you realize that, in Rome, eating is as much about ritual and community as it is about filling your belly. The city is a patchwork of flavors, from street snacks to elaborate feasts, and you're about to sample them all. You start with the basics. Lunch, or prandium, is usually a simple affair. You slice some bread, maybe add a bit of cheese or a handful of nuts, and if you're lucky, a few slices of cold meat left over from yesterday's dinner. You eat quickly, perched on a stool or the edge of your bed, because there's always something else to do. Historians still argue whether most Romans actually sat down for lunch or just grabbed a bite on the go, but you suspect it depends on how many chores are waiting for you. If you're out and about, you might stop at a popina, one of Rome's many street food stalls. The popina is the ancient world's answer to fast food, serving up hot pulse, a kind of porridge, sausages, fried fish, and the ever-popular chickpea pancakes. You hand over a coin and receive a steaming bowl of lentil stew, thick and hearty, perfect for fueling the rest of your day. You eat standing up, elbow to elbow with workers, merchants, and the occasional stray dog hoping for a dropped morsel. Quirky fact, some popinae were notorious for doubling as gambling dens and pickpocket hangouts, so you keep one hand on your coin pouch at all times. You wander through the market, sampling whatever catches your eye. A vendor offers you a fig, ripe and bursting with sweetness. Another tempts you with a skewer of grilled dormouse, a delicacy for those with adventurous tastes and strong stomachs. You try a bite, chewing thoughtfully. It's surprisingly tender, though you're not sure you'd order it again. You remember the time your little brother tried to keep a dormouse as a pet, only to discover it had been destined for the dinner table all along. As the day wears on, you start thinking about cena, the main meal of the day. Dinner in Rome is a social event, a chance to gather with family and friends, share stories, and show off your culinary skills, or at least your ability to not burn the stew. You help your mother prepare the meal, chopping vegetables, stirring pots, and sneaking tastes when you think no one is looking. The kitchen is a whirlwind of activity, with everyone pitching in. The menu depends on your means. If you're wealthy, dinner might start with gustaccio, a series of appetizers, eggs, salad, oysters, and little sausages drizzled with honey. The main course could be anything from roast pork to stuffed fish, served with a dizzying array of sauces and side dishes. Dessert is fruit, honey cakes, or, if you're really lucky, a rare treat like imported dates. If you're not so wealthy, dinner is simpler. Maybe a stew of beans and vegetables, a loaf of bread, and whatever fruit is in season. You make do, and you make it delicious. You set the table, such as it is, with clay plates and wooden spoons. You pour watered wine into cups, careful not to spill. The family gathers, squeezing onto benches and stools, everyone talking at once. You pass dishes back and forth, laughing as your little brother tries to sneak an extra helping. You remember the time he knocked over the wine jug and blamed it on the cat. The cat was not amused. You eat slowly, savoring each bite. The food is simple but satisfying, flavored with herbs from your tiny garden and a pinch of salt from the market. You listen to your grandmother tell stories about the old days, when bread was cheaper and the fish were bigger. You roll your eyes, but you love the stories all the same. After dinner, you clear the table and help wash the dishes in a basin of cold water. You dry the plates and stack them neatly, ready for tomorrow. You sneak a leftover honey cake from the pantry, sharing it with your sister as you sit by the window, watching the city lights flicker in the dusk. You talk about everything and nothing, enjoying the quiet moment before bedtime. Sometimes, if you're lucky, you're invited to a friend's house for a real Roman feast. The triclinium, or dining room, is set with couches instead of chairs, and you recline on your side, propped up on one elbow, like a true Roman aristocrat. The meal is a parade of dishes: stuffed dormice, honey, glazed ham, spiced wine, and more sauces than you can count. You try everything, even the things you can't quite identify, and pretend to enjoy the more exotic flavors. Quirky fact: some hosts hired professional entertainers, musicians, dancers, even poets to keep the guests amused between courses. You wonder if anyone ever hired a professional food taster, just in case. You watch as the host pours a libation to the household gods, a few drops of wine spilled on the floor as an offering. You join in, raising your cup and making a silent wish for good fortune. The conversation flows as easily as the wine, and you find yourself laughing at jokes, sharing stories, and feeling like part of something bigger than yourself. As the evening winds down, you thank your host and make your way home, the city quiet and peaceful under the stars. You slip inside, careful not to wake your family, and crawl into bed, your stomach full and your heart content. You drift off to sleep, dreaming of feasts, laughter, and the promise of another delicious day in Rome. You wake up the next morning with a yawn and a stretch, your mind already wandering to what the day might bring in the way of, at least, distraction. In Rome, entertainment is everywhere, from the grand spectacle of the Circus Maximus to the quiet thrill of a dice game in a shady corner. You're not a senator or a gladiator, but you know how to enjoy yourself. And today, you're determined to squeeze every drop of amusement from the city's endless offerings. You step outside, the street alive with the sounds of children playing, vendors shouting, and somewhere in the distance, the faint roar of a crowd. You follow the noise, curiosity piqued, and soon find yourself swept up in a tide of people heading toward the Circus Maximus. The chariot races are the talk of the town, and you're not about to miss the action. Historians still argue whether the average Roman was truly obsessed with the races, or if it was just the best excuse to skip work for the day. Judging by the size of the crowd, you're guessing it's a bit of both. You squeeze into a seat, wedged between a fishmonger and a baker, both of whom are already arguing about which team will win. The air is electric, the crowd a living, breathing beast that surges and roars as the chariots line up at the starting gate. You pick a favorite, maybe the blues, maybe the green sand, join in the shouting, your voice lost in the sea of excitement. The race begins, wheels spinning, horses thundering, and for a few heart-pounding moments, nothing else in the world matters. You cheer, you groan, you clutch your neighbor's arm as the chariots round the final turn. Your team doesn't win, but you don't care. The thrill is in the chase, not the finish. After the race, you wander through the city, still buzzing with excitement. You pass a group of boys playing a game of Trigon, tossing a small ball back and forth with impressive speed. You join in, laughing as you fumble the catch and the ball bounces off your head. Quirky fact, some Romans believed that playing ball games was good for digestion, though you're pretty sure it's just an excuse to avoid chores. You make your way to a friend's house, where a group has gathered for a board game marathon. The game of choice is Ludus Latrunculorum, a strategy game that's part chess, part checkers, and all bragging rights. You settle in, plotting your moves, and trying to outwit your opponents. The room is filled with laughter, groans, and the occasional accusation of cheating, always delivered with a wink. You win a few rounds, lose a few more, and vow to practice before the next game night. As the afternoon wears on, you head to the baths, where the real socializing happens. The tepidarium is packed with people swapping stories, debating politics, and making plans for the next festival. You join a game of dice, tossing the knucklebones and hoping for a lucky throw. You win a handful of coins, lose them just as quickly, and laugh it off. After all, it's only money, and the real prize is the company. You remember the time your friend tried to cheat by slipping an extra knucklebone into the mix, only to be caught by the sharp-eyed bath attendant. The resulting lecture was almost as entertaining as the game itself. You dry off and head outside, where a street performer is drawing a crowd with his juggling and jokes. You toss him a coin, joining in the laughter as he balances a clay pot on his head and pretends to trip over his own feet. You wonder if he practices at home, or if he's just naturally clumsy. Either way, he's a hit, and you leave with a smile on your face. You wander through the city, taking in the sights and sounds. You pass a tavern, its doors thrown open to the evening air, and hear the raucous laughter of patrons inside. You step in, greeted by the smell of spiced wine and roasting meat. You join a game of tabula, a board game that's equal parts luck and strategy. You win a round, lose the next, and buy a round of drinks for your friends. The night is young and the city is alive with possibility. You step back outside, the sky darkening as the stars begin to appear. You make your way to the Forum, where a crowd has gathered to watch a troupe of actors perform a comedy. The play is full of slapstick humor, clever wordplay, and the kind of jokes that make your grandmother shake her head in disapproval. You laugh until your sides ache, grateful for the chance to forget your worries for a while. Historians still debate whether Roman theater was truly as bawdy as the ancient writers claim, or if the jokes have just gotten better with age. As the performance ends, you join the crowd in applause, then make your way home, your heart light and your mind buzzing with memories of the day. You slip inside, careful not to wake your family, and crawl into bed, your head filled with dreams of chariot races, board games, and the endless possibilities of Roman entertainment. You drift off to sleep, a smile on your face, already looking forward to whatever fun tomorrow might bring. You wake to the gentle glow of morning sunlight filtering through your window, and before your feet even hit the floor, you're already thinking about the little rituals that shape your day. In Rome, religion isn't just something you do on holiday sits woven into every moment, every meal, every decision. You stretch, yawn, and glance at the small household altar in the corner, where the Lares and Penitentiary family's guardian spirits keep silent watch over your home. You shuffle over, still half asleep, and place a crumb of bread and a splash of wine on the altar. It's a simple offering, but you do it every morning, just as your parents and grandparents did before you. You whisper a quick prayer for health, luck, and maybe a little extra patience with your siblings. Quirky fact: some Romans believed that if you forgot your morning offering, the household gods might hide your sandals or make your soup taste funny all day. You're not about to risk it. You head out into the street, the city already alive with the sounds of daily life. You pass a neighbor sprinkling salt at her doorstep, muttering a charm to ward off the evil eye. You nod politely. Careful not to step on the threshold, everyone knows that's bad luck. Historians still argue whether these superstitions were truly believed or just a way to add a little drama to the morning routine. Either way, you're not taking any chances. You make your way to the market, where the air is thick with the scent of incense from a nearby temple. You pause for a moment, watching as a priest in spotless white robes leads a procession, scattering flower petals and chanting prayers. The crowd parts respectfully, some bowing their heads, others just trying to get to the bread stall before it sells out. You toss a coin into the temple's offering box, making a silent wish for good fortune. You stop by a friend's house, where a small group is gathered for a private ceremony. They're honoring Vesta, goddess of the hearth, with a simple ritual: lighting a fresh fire, offering a pinch of salt, and sharing a cup of wine. You join in, feeling the warmth of the fire and the comfort of tradition. You remember the time your little brother tried to help with the ritual and nearly set his tunic on fire? The smell of singed wool lingered for days. You head to the Forum, where the temples are always busy. You pass the grand temple of Jupiter, its steps crowded with worshippers and petitioners. You watch as a priest sacrifices a white dove, the smoke from the altar rising in a fragrant cloud. You wonder if the gods are really listening, or if they're just enjoying the show. Quirky fact: some Romans believed that the gods communicated through omens. Everything from the flight of birds to the shape of a sheep's liver could be a message from above. You keep an eye out for any particularly chatty pigeons, just in case. You overhear a heated debate between two philosophers about the true nature of the gods. One insists that Jupiter is all-powerful, while the other claims the gods are just metaphors for natural forces. You listen for a while, amused by their passion, and then slip away before they can rope you into the argument. Historians still debate whether most Romans were deeply religious or just went through the motions to keep up appearances. You suspect it's a little of both, after all. It never hurts to have the gods on your side. You make your way to the baths, where the conversation turns to omens and superstitions. Someone claims to have seen a two-headed snake in the garden, a sure sign of impending disaster. Another swears that his neighbor's cow gave birth to a calf with 3 legs, which must mean good luck, unless it means bad luck. No one can quite agree, but everyone has a story to share. You dry off and head home, passing a group of children playing with clay figurines of the gods. They act out little dramas, complete with thunderbolts and miraculous rescues. You smile, remembering your own childhood games, and wonder if the gods ever get tired of being the stars of so many stories. As evening falls, you gather with your family around the hearth. You light a fresh fire, offer a bit of bread and wine to the lares, and share stories from the day. You listen as your grandmother tells tales of the old gods, her voice soft and full of wonder. You feel a sense of connection not just to your family, but to the generations that came before you. You head to bed, the scent of incense still lingering in the air. You close your eyes, whisper a final prayer for good dreams, and drift off to sleep, comforted by the rituals that shape your world. You may not have all the answers, but you have your traditions, your superstitions, and the quiet hope that the gods are watching over you at least, when they're not too busy with their own divine drama. You wake up with a tickle in your throat and a vague sense of dread, because in Rome, getting sick is a bit like rolling dice with the fates. You shuffle to the window, hoping the fresh air will help. But the city's usual blend of smoke, dust, and eau de Tiber isn't exactly medicinal. You cough, wince, and remember that in ancient Rome, medicine is a curious mix of science, superstition, and whatever your grandmother can dig out of her herb jar. You mention your sore throat to your mother, who immediately prescribes a spoonful of honey mixed with vinegar. It's sweet, sour, and makes you wonder if she's secretly trying to pickle you. She insists it's a tried-and-true remedy, passed down from her mother and her mother's mother before that. Quirky fact, some Romans believed cabbage could cure almost anything: hangovers, headaches, even the heartbreak of losing at dice. You eye the cabbage on the table and hope it's not your next prescription. If things get worse, you might be sent to the local medicus, the neighborhood doctor. His shop is a jumble of herbs, bandages, and mysterious tools that look more suited to carpentry than medicine. He listens to your symptoms, nods sagely, and prescribes a poultice of crushed garlic and honey to be applied directly to your throat. You try not to gag as he wraps your neck in a sticky, fragrant bandage. Historians still argue whether Roman doctors were genuinely effective or just really good at sounding confident while handing out questionable advice. You watch as the medicus prepares a potion for another patient, a mixture of wine, herbs, and a dash of imported Egyptian spices. He claims it will cure everything from fever to bad dreams. You're skeptical, but the patient downs it in one gulp, grimacing at the taste. You remember the time your neighbor tried to cure his cough with a concoction of boiled mouse and honey. He got better, but you're pretty sure it was just a coincidence. You head home, your throat still sore, but your spirits lifted by the familiar chaos of the city. You pass a group of women gathering herbs in a small garden, their baskets overflowing with sage, rosemary, and mint. They swap recipes for teas and poultices, each one swearing by her own secret blend. You join in, picking a few sprigs of mint for your own tea. You remember the time your little brother scraped his knee and your grandmother insisted on rubbing it with a clove of garlic. He complained about the smell for days, but the cut healed nicely. You wonder if there's anything garlic can't do. Quirky fact: some Romans believed that wearing an amulet made from wolf's tooth could ward off illness, and you see children running around with all sorts of odd trinkets tied around their necks. You help your mother prepare dinner, chopping vegetables and stirring the pot. She adds a handful of herbs, explaining that they're good for the digestion. You nod, not entirely convinced, but grateful for the familiar flavors. You remember the time your father ate too much at a feast and spent the next day drinking nothing but barley water and muttering about the wrath of Bacchus. You make a mental note to pace yourself at the next party. You hear a commotion outside and step into the street, where a traveling healer has set up shop. He's selling miracle cures bottles of colored water, packets of mysterious powders, and a salve that promises to cure everything from baldness to broken hearts. The crowd is skeptical but curious, and a few brave souls hand over their coins. You watch as he applies the salve to a bald man's head, promising a full head of hair by the next new moon. You're tempted to buy a bottle, just for the story. You return home, your throat feeling a little better after a cup of hot mint tea. You settle in for the evening, listening to your grandmother tell stories about the old days, when doctors were few and most cures came from the kitchen. She swears by her cabbage poultice, her honeyed wine, and her secret recipe for insomnia: warm bath, a soft pillow, and a good story. You head to bed, grateful for the comforts of home and the wisdom of generations past. You close your eyes, whisper a quick prayer to Aesculapius, the god of healing, and drift off to sleep, dreaming of garlic, honey, and the hope that tomorrow you'll wake up feeling good as new. You wake up to the sound of your neighbor's rooster crowing, and as you stretch, you're reminded that in Rome, who you are and who people think you are matters almost as much as what you do. The city is a maze of invisible ladders and social boundaries, and every day is a careful dance of status, gender, and ambition. You pull on your tunic, tie your belt, and glance in the polished bronze mirror, wondering if today you'll manage to climb a rung or two, or at least avoid sliding down. If you're a man, your status is written in the folds of your toga, the calluses on your hands, and the company you keep. You might be a plebeian, working hard to keep your family fed, or a patrician, born into privilege and expected to act the part. You remember the time your friend tried to sneak into a patrician party wearing a borrowed toga with a fake purple stripe. He made it as far as the appetizer tray before someone noticed his sandals were last year's style. Quirky fact: only senators and the emperor could wear the full purple toga, and the dye was so expensive it was said to be worth its weight in gold. If you're a woman, your world is just as complex, though the rules are different. You're expected to run the household, raise the children, and keep the family's reputation spotless. You might envy the freedom of your brothers, but you know that your influence is felt in quieter ways, through whispered advice, clever matchmaking, and the subtle art of managing the family's affairs. Historians still argue whether Roman women were truly confined to the home or if they wielded more power behind the scenes than anyone realized. You suspect the truth is somewhere in the middle after all. You've seen your mother out-negotiate a fishmonger and a senator in the same afternoon. You head out into the street, where the city's social order is on full display. The wealthy ride by in litters, their slaves clearing the way, while merchants shout from their stalls and laborers hurry to their jobs. You nod to a neighbor, careful to use the right greeting. Too formal and you'll seem pretentious, too casual and you risk offense. You remember the time you accidentally called a magistrate buddy and spent the rest of the week avoiding his glare. You pass a group of freedmen, former slaves who have earned their freedom and are now working to build new lives. Their status is complicated, no longer slaves, but not quite full citizens either. Some have become wealthy merchants, others struggle to be accepted by the old families. You overhear a heated debate about whether a freedman's son can ever truly be considered a real Roman. You keep your opinions to yourself, knowing that in Rome, the answer depends on who's asking. You make your way to the market, where the social hierarchy is as clear as the price of olives. The best stalls go to the wealthiest merchants, while newcomers are left to hawk their wares from the edges. You watch as a young woman haggles for a better price, her confidence earning her a few raised eyebrows and a grudging respect. You remember the time your sister talked a vendor down to half price, only to discover she'd bought last week's figs. Lesson learned. In Rome, status helps, but savvy is priceless. You pass a group of children playing in the street, their game's a miniature version of the adult world. The emperor barks orders, the senators argue, and the slaves do all the work. You smile, remembering your own childhood games, and wonder if anyone ever really outgrows the urge to climb higher. You stop by a friend's house, where a small gathering is underway. The conversation turns to marriage prospects, dowries, and the latest gossip from the forum. You listen as your friend's mother boasts about her daughter's new suitor, young man from a good family, with a promising future and, more importantly, a generous dowry. You nod politely, knowing that in Rome, marriage is as much about alliances as it is about love. Quirky fact: some Roman brides wore bright orange veils on their wedding day, a tradition said to bring good luck and, presumably, make it easier to spot the bride in a crowd. You head to the baths, where the social rules are a little more relaxed. Here, everyone is equal, at least until someone starts bragging about their new villa or the size of their latest fish. You join a game of dice, laughing as fortunes rise and fall with each throw. You remember the time you won a week's wages, only to lose it all in the next round. In Rome, luck is as fickle as the gods. As evening falls, you return home, your mind buzzing with the day's encounters. You help your mother prepare dinner, sharing stories and gossip from the market. You listen as your father talks about his work, his hopes for the future, and the challenges of keeping up appearances in a city where everyone is watching. You feel the weight of expectation, but also the thrill of possibility. You head to bed, thinking about the invisible ladders that crisscross your world. You dream of climbing higher, of making your mark, and of finding your place in the ever-shifting tapestry of Roman society. You may not have all the answers, but you know that in Rome, anything is possible if you're clever, lucky, and just bold enough to reach for it. You're winding your way home as the sun dips behind the rooftops, painting the city in gold and shadow. Nightfall in Rome is a world unto itself, equal parts mystery, mischief, and the kind of noise that makes you wonder if anyone ever actually sleeps. You pull your cloak tighter, feeling the first cool breath of evening, and step carefully along the uneven stones, dodging puddles and the occasional pile of something best left unidentified. The streets are still busy, but the energy has shifted. Vendors pack up their stalls, calling out last-minute deals on wilted greens and day-old bread. Children dart between shadows, playing games that seem to get louder as the light fades. You pass a group of neighbors gathered around a flickering oil lamp, swapping stories and sharing a jug of watered wine. The air is thick with laughter, gossip, and the faint scent of roasting chestnuts. Quirky fact: some Romans believed that eating chestnuts at night would keep away bad dreams, though you suspect it's just an excuse for a midnight snack. You make your way past the insulae, their windows glowing with lamplight. You can hear snippets of conversation, the clatter of dishes, and the occasional outburst from a family argument. Privacy is a rare luxury, and the city's soundtrack is a constant companion. You remember the time your neighbor tried to host a secret party, only for the entire building to show up uninvited. In Rome, secrets are as rare as a quiet night. You pass the public fountains, where a few latecomers fill their jars before the water is shut off for the night. The moon glimmers on the surface, and you pause for a moment, enjoying the cool air and the hush that settles over the city. You toss a pebble into the water, making a silent wish for a peaceful night. You turn down a narrow alley, the shadows deepening around you. You keep one hand on your coin pouch. Rome is beautiful, but she's not always gentle, especially after dark. Historians still argue whether the city was truly as dangerous at night as the ancient poets claimed, or if they just like to scare their readers. You decide it's better to be safe than sorry, and quicken your pace. You pass a tavern, its doors thrown open to the night. Laughter and music spill out, mingling with the smell of spiced wine and roasting meat. You peek inside, tempted by the warmth and the promise of company, but decide to head home instead. You remember the time you stayed out too late and spent the next day dodging your mother's questions and your father's disapproving glare. Lesson learned mostly. You reach your building, climbing the creaky stairs as quietly as you can. The hallway is dim, lit by a single oil lamp that flickers in the draft. You slip inside your apartment, greeted by the familiar jumble of smell stew, smoke, and the faintest hint of lavender from your mother's sachet. You hang your cloak, kick off your sandals, and sink onto your bed with a sigh. Your family is already settling in for the night. Your siblings whisper stories under their blankets. Your parents share a quiet conversation by the hearth, and your grandmother hums a lullaby as she tidies up. You join them, sharing the day's adventures and laughing at the little mishaps that make life in Rome so unpredictable. You prepare for bed, changing into a soft tunic and fluffing your straw-stuffed pillow. You light a small oil lamp, its gentle glow casting dancing shadows on the walls. You say a quick prayer to the household gods, asking for good dreams and a quiet night. Quirky fact: some Romans believed that sleeping with a sprig of rosemary under your pillow would ward off nightmares. You tuck a bit of rosemary under your pillow, just in case. You lie down, listening to the city's lullaby, the distant bark of a dog, the soft clatter of a cart, the occasional shout from a late-night reveler. You close your eyes, letting the sounds wash over you, and feel yourself drifting towards sleep. But sleep in Rome isn't always easy. The city is noisy, the beds are lumpy, and the mosquitoes are relentless. You toss and turn, trying to find a comfortable spot, and remember the time your little brother tried to build a pillow fort to keep out the bugs. It worked until the cat decided to move in. You finally settle, pulling your blanket up to your chin and letting your mind wander. You think about the day, the laughter, the challenges, the small victories. You feel a sense of peace, knowing that you're part of the great, noisy, ever-changing city that is Rome. You drift off to sleep, dreaming of moonlit streets, whispered secrets, and the promise of a new day. In Rome, even the night is alive with possibility. You wake to the gentle glow of dawn, the city still wrapped in a soft hush that only lasts a few precious moments each day. The air is cool, tinged with the scent of dew and distant wood smoke, and for a brief instant, Rome feels almost peaceful. You stretch, listening to the slow stirrings of your family and the faint clatter of a baker's cart rolling down the street. Today, you're thinking about time itself, how the days, weeks, and years flow in Rome, marked by seasons, festivals, and the ever-turning calendar. You rise and help your mother open the shutters, letting in the first rays of sunlight. The city is waking up, and with it comes the rhythm of daily life, shaped by the calendar's steady march. In Rome, time isn't just measured in hours and days, but in rituals, celebrations, and the subtle changes of the seasons. You glance at the family's wax tablet, where your father has scratched out the day's date, kalends, nones, or ides, depending on where you are in the month. Quirky fact: the Roman calendar is a patchwork of old traditions and new reforms, and even the most educated citizens sometimes get confused about which festival falls when you help prepare breakfast. The kitchen filled with the golden light of morning. Your grandmother hums a tune from her childhood, a song she claims is only sung during the Saturnalia festival. You smile, knowing that Saturnalia is months away, but the song is too cheerful to correct her. Historians still argue whether the Roman calendar was truly as confusing as it seems, or if people just liked having an excuse to celebrate whenever they felt like it. You step outside, the city already buzzing with anticipation. Today is a festival day maybe Floralia, with its riot of flowers and playful games, or Lupercalia, with its wild races and cheeky pranks. The streets are decorated with garlands, and you can hear the laughter of children as they chase each other through the crowds. You join in, tossing petals and dodging a group of boys armed with willow switches. The city feels lighter, brighter, as if the very stones are smiling. You make your way to the Forum, where a crowd has gathered for the day's festivities. Musicians play lively tunes, dancers whirl in colorful costumes, and vendors hawk sweet cakes and spiced wine. You buy a honey cake, savoring its sticky sweetness, and watch as a troupe of actors performs a comedy, their jokes sending ripples of laughter through the crowd. You remember the time your little brother tried to join the actors, only to trip over his own feet and bring down the stage curtain. He still insists it was part of the act. As the day unfolds, you visit the temple, offering a handful of flowers and a whispered prayer to the gods. You watch as priests lead a procession, their robes gleaming in the sunlight, and feel a sense of connection to the generations who have celebrated these same festivals year after year. You join your family for a picnic in the park, sharing bread, cheese, and stories beneath the shade of a spreading fig tree. The city is alive with music, laughter, and the gentle hum of contentment. As evening falls, the festival winds down. You walk home through streets strewn with petals and confetti, the air still buzzing with the day's joy. You help tidy up, sweeping the stoop and sharing a final cup of wine with your family. You sit together, watching the stars appear one by one, and feel the quiet satisfaction of a day well spent. You prepare for bed, the city settling into its nighttime rhythm. You lie down, listening to the distant echoes of laughter and music, and think about the cycles of time that shape your life. The seasons will turn, the festivals will come and go, and you'll greet each new day with the same hope and curiosity that has carried Romans through centuries. You close your eyes, grateful for the simple joys of daily life, family, friends, good food, and the endless, ever-changing rhythm of Rome. You drift off to sleep, dreaming of garlands, laughter, and the promise of another festival just around the corner. Now, as the city's lights fade and the last echoes of laughter drift away, you let your breath slow and your body sink into the gentle embrace of sleep. The world outside grows softer, the distant sounds of Rome blending into a soothing lullaby, just the hush of the wind, the quiet footsteps of a neighbor heading home, and the gentle creak of your bed as you settle in. You feel the weight of the day slip away, replaced by a calm warmth that spreads from your toes to the top of your head. Each breath is a little slower, a little deeper, as you let go of the worries and busyness of the day. You picture the city at night, the moonlight glinting on tiled roofs, the silent watch of the household gods, the peaceful rhythm of a world at rest. You know that tomorrow will bring new adventures, new stories, and new reasons to smile. For now, you are safe, you are home, and you are exactly where you need to be. Let your thoughts drift, like petals on the Tiber, floating gently toward dreams. The city sleeps, and so do you, wrapped in the comfort of history, family, and the quiet magic of an ordinary Roman night. Good night, and may your dreams be as sweet as honey cakes and as peaceful as a Roman courtyard at dawn. End of story. Have a sweet dreams.